You think you're so indispensable, don't you, Davies? So noble, so principled. Well, let me tell you, principles don't pay the bills, and they certainly don't get you a corner office. You and your little protégée, Clara, are about to learn that the hard way. This company runs on loyalty, Daniel, not on some misguided sense of justice that only serves to derail progress. You've made your bed, now lie in it. And as for you, Clara, your career here is effectively over. A mere whisper of impropriety, a shadow of doubt, is all it takes. The words, laced with a venomous disdain, hung in the air like a noxious fog, heavy and suffocating, aimed directly at Daniel and Clara, designed to strip them of their dignity and their future. The sterile conference room, typically a space for calculated victories, now felt like a tribunal, each polished surface reflecting their impending professional demise. Before we begin, tell me in the comments which city you're listening to this story from. The air in the modern London office building, usually a crisp, almost clinical blend of filtered air and the faint scent of expensive coffee, now seemed to carry a metallic tang, the bitter aftertaste of a dream dissolving. It was a taste Daniel knew well, a familiar companion in moments of acute professional pressure. But never before had it felt so profoundly personal, so deeply rooted in the very core of his being. His heart, a steady drum usually, now hammered against his ribs with an erratic, frantic beat, echoing the tremor in his hands, barely perceptible but intensely felt. He was Daniel, a financial analyst, a man whose life had been meticulously built on the bedrock of logic, integrity, and an unwavering belief in fairness. He had always prided himself on his moral compass, a silent, internal guide that had steered him through countless ethical dilemmas, both minor and significant. Today, however, that compass felt like a lead weight, dragging him into an abyss of uncertainty. His gaze, normally sharp and analytical, now drifted, unfocused, across the sleek, minimalist design of his office. The expansive glass walls, meant to symbolize transparency and openness, instead felt like a cage, displaying his vulnerability for all to see. Outside, the London skyline, a familiar mosaic of historical grandeur and gleaming modernity, seemed indifferent to the tempest raging within him. Each skyscraper, a testament to ambition and power, mocked his current predicament. In a sea of corporate machinations, caught between the unyielding currents of ambition and the immovable rock of his own conscience. The central conflict, a serpent coiling itself around his professional life, was stark and unforgiving. His boss, a man named Marcus Thorne, had passed him over for a well-deserved promotion, isolating him within the very department he had helped to build. The reason? Daniel's refusal to twist the truth, to manipulate a report that would have unjustly implicated Clara, a colleague whose quiet competence and genuine kindness had always resonated with him. Clara, a woman of quiet strength and meticulous attention to detail, was now caught in the crossfire, a pawn in a larger, uglier game that Daniel refused to play. The stakes were painfully clear. Short-term, the lost opportunity of a lifetime, a career trajectory brutally derailed. Long-term, the chilling prospect of stagnation, of being forever branded as uncooperative, a pariah in a world that valued compliance above all else. This was a story, not just of a man fighting for his career, but for his very soul, a quiet rebellion against the insidious erosion of integrity. Act 1. Daniel had always viewed the corporate world as a complex, often cutthroat ecosystem, but one where, ultimately, merit and hard work would prevail. He believed in the slow, steady climb, each rung earned through dedication and ethical conduct. From his modest beginnings, growing up in a working-class neighborhood in the outskirts of London, he had been instilled, with a potent blend of humility and an unshakable moral code. His parents, both civil servants, had taught him that a good name was worth more than any fortune, and that integrity was not just a virtue, but a responsibility. He carried these lessons into every aspect of his life, especially his career at Sterling and Finch, a prestigious financial institution where he had spent the last 8 years. His routine was a testament to his disciplined nature. He woke before dawn, the pre-light stillness of his small apartment a sanctuary for his thoughts. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting prelude to the day's intellectual challenges. He would cycle through the awakening streets of London, the cool morning air invigorating his senses, the city slowly stirring around him. He loved the rhythmic whir of his bicycle chain, the subtle symphony of urban life coming alive, the distant rumble of the underground, the first tentative chirps of sparrows, the hushed conversations of early commuters. These moments of quiet observation were his anchor, grounding him before he immersed himself in the high-stakes world of financial analysis. At the office, Daniel was known for his quiet efficiency and his unwavering attention to detail. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, nor the most charismatic, but his reports were always meticulously researched, his analyses incisive, his projections remarkably accurate. Colleagues respected him, not just for his professional acumen, but for his even temperament and his willingness to always lend a hand. He was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, who offered a genuine compliment, who stayed late to help a junior analyst untangle a particularly knotty spreadsheet. Clara was one such colleague. She had joined Sterling and Finch 2 years prior, fresh out of a demanding economics program, her brilliance overshadowed only by her shyness. Daniel had taken her under his wing, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine recognition of her potential. He saw in her the same quiet dedication, the same meticulous approach that he valued in himself. They often worked on projects together, their desks side by side, a silent understanding passing between them through shared glances and quick, efficient exchanges of data. Clara, with her neatly tied back auburn hair and perpetually focused expression, often brought him homemade shortbread, a small, unspoken gesture of gratitude and camaraderie. The smell of cinnamon and butter would briefly cut through the sterile office air, a warm, homely comfort. He remembered the faint blush that would creep onto her cheeks when he praised her work, a testament to her humble nature. Their bond wasn't romantic, but rather a deep professional respect, a kinship of two souls navigating the often treacherous waters of corporate ambition with a shared commitment to ethical practice. He saw her not just as a colleague, but as a person deserving of protection, a sentiment that would soon be tested in the most profound way. The first subtle cracks in Daniel's carefully constructed world began to appear with the arrival of Marcus Thorne, their new department head. Thorne was everything Daniel was not: boisterous, aggressively ambitious, and utterly ruthless. He moved through the office like a shark, sensing weakness, demanding loyalty that bordered on subservience. Thorne had a knack for charming the upper echelons, painting a picture of relentless drive and unparalleled success. But his methods were often questionable, his pursuit of results blind to the collateral damage. Daniel had felt an instinctive unease from their first meeting. Thorne's handshake was firm, almost aggressive. His eyes, though smiling, held a calculating glint. "Daniel, excellent to have you on the team," Thorne had boomed, clapping him on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more like a claim of ownership than a welcome. "I've heard good things. We are going to make some serious waves here, shake things up. You're with me, right?" The question wasn't a question at all, but a demand for allegiance, a subtle test. Daniel had simply nodded, a tight smile on his face, a flicker of apprehension igniting in his gut. The atmosphere in the department shifted almost immediately. The easy camaraderie that had once permeated the cubicles gave way to a palpable tension. whispers replaced open conversations, and a competitive edge sharpened, cutting through the previously collaborative spirit. Thorne pitted colleagues against each other, fostering an environment where success was often achieved at another's expense. Daniel, ever the observer, watched these changes with a growing sense of dread, feeling the ethical foundations of his workplace slowly eroding beneath his feet. He saw how Thorne would subtly undermine those he deemed less ambitious or compliant, how he manipulated narratives to serve his own agenda. The faint, persistent hum of the server racks in the office seemed to grow louder, an ominous drone accompanying the shift in the departmental dynamic. One afternoon, Daniel found himself in Thorne's office, the heavy oak door shutting behind him with a resonant thud that seemed to seal his fate. The room was opulent, adorned with expensive art and a panoramic view of the city, a stark contrast to Daniel's own minimalist workspace. Thorne, leaning back in his executive chair, a predatory smile playing on his lips, gestured to a stack of papers on his desk. Daniel, a word about the upcoming Q3 report, specifically the projections for the Albatross acquisition. Daniel approached the desk, his gaze settling on the documents. The Albatross acquisition had been a contentious issue within the company, a high-stakes venture that had consumed countless hours of analysis. Yes, Marcus, my team and I have been working tirelessly. The projections indicate a slightly slower integration period than initially anticipated, but overall, it's still a sound investment long-term. Thorne's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. Long-term is fine, Daniel, but the board, and more importantly, the CEO, want to see immediate, impressive returns. We need to paint a more optimistic picture. Short-term gains are what drive market confidence. Wouldn't you agree? He pushed a specific section of the report towards Daniel. Look at these figures, particularly the operational efficiency gains. We need to amplify these, and frankly, Clara's initial risk assessment for the integration phase is far too conservative. It's dragging our numbers down. Daniel picked up the report, his brow furrowing as he read the highlighted sections. Clara's assessment, he knew, was based on rigorous data and a cautious yet realistic approach. To inflate those numbers, to downplay the inherent risks, would be not only misleading, but potentially disastrous. It would be a lie. The cool, smooth paper felt suddenly rough beneath his fingertips, a symbol of the friction building within him. He could almost smell the faint metallic scent of ink, a scent that now seemed to carry the stench of deceit. Marcus, Daniel began, his voice calm, but with an underlying current of resolve. Clara's analysis is robust. Her figures account for potential delays in regulatory approval and supply chain disruptions. To present anything less would be disingenuous. It would expose us to undue risk. He met Thorne's gaze directly, an unspoken challenge in his eyes. He felt the heavy weight of his principles settle squarely on his shoulders, a burden he would not shirk. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, punctuated only by the distant hum of the building's ventilation system, which now sounded like a low, growling threat. Act 2. The silence in Marcus Thorne's office was not an empty one. It was pregnant with unspoken threats, heavy with the weight of consequence. Daniel felt the air grow colder, the veneer of corporate pleasantries stripping away to reveal the raw, exposed ambition beneath. Thorne's smile finally vanished, replaced by a tight, humorless line. His eyes, once merely calculating, now gleamed with a chilling intensity. Disingenuous? Thorne's voice was low, almost a hiss, a dangerous undertone that belied his calm posture. He pushed himself forward, resting his forearms on the desk, leaning into Daniel's personal space. A faint scent of Thorne's expensive cologne, usually a symbol of his elevated status, now felt cloying, suffocating. Let me explain something to you, Daniel. In this business, perception is reality. And the reality we need to project right now is one of unbridled success, of aggressive growth. Clara's robust analysis, as you call it, paints a picture of hesitation, of weakness. It makes us look timid. And timid doesn't get you promoted, Daniel. Bold does. He paused, letting his words hang in the air, a deliberate manipulation of the power dynamic. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He understood the game Thorne was playing, the veiled threat, the unspoken promise of reward for compliance. But the image of Clara, diligently poring over her spreadsheets, her brow furrowed in concentration, flashed in his mind. He knew her work was impeccable, her integrity unassailable. To throw her under the bus, to distort her findings for Thorne's personal gain, was anathema to everything Daniel stood for. The ethical line, usually a clear boundary, now felt like a chasm opening at his feet. I cannot, in good conscience, alter the report to reflect inaccurate projections, Marcus, Daniel stated, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands, which he clasped tightly behind his back. It would compromise my professional ethics, and it would ultimately harm the company. Clara's projections are sound. They are based on facts, not on speculative optimism. Thorne pushed back from his desk abruptly, the screech of his chair against the polished floor a jarring sound. He rose and walked to the window, his back to Daniel, his posture radiating displeasure. The city outside, normally a source of inspiration, seemed to mock Daniel's resolve, an indifferent witness to his moral stand. Facts, Thorne scoffed, without turning around. Facts are malleable, Daniel. They can be presented in various lights. The art is in choosing the right light. And you, it seems, are choosing to stand in the shadow. He turned slowly, a chilling smile returning to his face. Let me be explicit. There's a senior analyst position opening up, the one you've been eyeing, the one you've worked so hard for. It's yours for the taking. All you have to do is refine Clara's section of the report. Make it more aligned with our strategic vision. We can even say she misinterpreted some data, a minor oversight on her part. It happens. No harm, no foul. A simple reinterpretation. The proposition hung in the air, a poisoned chalice offered with a seductive smile. Daniel felt a wave of nausea wash over him. The promotion, the culmination of years of relentless effort, was dangled before him, a glittering prize. He could almost taste the success, feel the weight of the increased responsibility, the satisfaction of achieving a long-held goal. But the cost was Clara's reputation, her career, and Daniel's own soul. He imagined the shame, the gnawing regret that would accompany such a betrayal. The thought was unbearable. No, Daniel said, the word emerging stronger than he expected, resonating with a newfound conviction. I won't do it. Clara is an exceptional analyst, and her work is accurate. I won't lie, and I won't scapegoat a colleague. Thorne's eyes narrowed, all pretense of cordiality gone. Then you leave me no choice, Daniel. Consider your promotion withdrawn, effective immediately, and perhaps consider your position here at Sterling and Finch less secure than you once believed. He walked back to his desk, picked up a pen, and began signing a document, dismissing Daniel with a casual flick of his wrist, as if he were an inconsequential annoyance. The scent of Thorne's cologne now felt like the acrid smell of burnt ambition. The faint, persistent hum of the server racks seemed to morph into a mournful dirge. Daniel stood there for a moment, the weight of Thorne's words pressing down on him. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The vibrant colors of the office, the bustling energy of the city, all seemed to drain away, leaving him in a monochrome landscape of professional ruin. His future, which moments ago had seemed so clear, now dissolved into an impenetrable fog. He felt a profound sense of injustice, a deep, aching wound in his chest. Yet, beneath the pain, a quiet resolve began to harden. He had made his choice, and he would stand by it, even if it meant sacrificing everything he had worked for. He turned and walked out of the office, the heavy door closing behind him with a final, echoing thud, sealing not just his fate, but a new chapter in his life. The cool, smooth surface of the doorknob felt strangely comforting, a tactile reminder of the boundary he had just crossed. The next few weeks were a slow, agonizing descent into professional purgatory. The once vibrant hum of the department was replaced by an oppressive silence whenever Daniel entered a room. Colleagues who had once greeted him with genuine warmth now averted their gaze, their smiles stiff and fleeting. The air around him felt thick with unspoken whispers, with the subtle judgment of those who had witnessed his defiance, or perhaps simply heard Thorne's version of events. Daniel became an island, adrift in a sea of indifferent faces. His once collaborative projects were systematically reassigned. His emails went unanswered. Invitations to team lunches and after-work drinks mysteriously stopped arriving. He was isolated, not explicitly, but subtly, expertly, a masterclass in corporate ostracization. The scent of coffee in the break room, once a pleasant aroma, now carried the faint, bitter undertone of loneliness. He heard the hushed conversations, the sudden silences, the quick, fleeting glances that spoke volumes. The clatter of keyboards, usually a comforting backdrop, now sounded like a relentless, mocking rhythm. Clara, too, felt the ripple effects of Thorne's machinations. Her original, accurate report on the Albatross acquisition was quietly shelved, a revised version, heavily massaged with Thorne's optimistic projections, taking its place. She was removed from the project, relegated to menial tasks, her brilliant mind underutilized, her contributions effectively silenced. Daniel watched her, her shoulders slightly slumped, the usual sparkle in her eyes diminished. He saw the struggle, the quiet dignity with which she bore the injustice, and it fueled his own simmering anger, cementing his belief that he had made the right choice, despite the crushing personal cost. One evening, as the office emptied, leaving only the soft glow of emergency lights and the ghostly hum of dormant machines, Daniel found Clara still at her desk, staring blankly at her computer screen. The fluorescent lights above cast a harsh, unforgiving glow on her pale face. He approached cautiously, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the cavernous, empty space. "Clara?" he asked softly, his voice cutting through the silence. She startled, her head snapping up, a flicker of surprise, then something akin to shame crossing her features. "Daniel, I thought everyone had left." Her voice was barely a whisper. He pulled up a chair beside her, the plastic scraping faintly against the carpet. "I stayed late, just catching up on some things." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm sorry, Clara, about all of this, about the report. I know what Thorne did." Clara finally met his gaze, her eyes brimming with a fragile vulnerability. He said I was too junior, too cautious, that my numbers weren't forward-thinking enough. He made it sound like I almost sabotaged the acquisition." A tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. "I worked so hard on that report, Daniel. Every figure was meticulously sourced, every projection rigorously stress-tested. It was honest." Daniel reached out, placing a comforting hand on her arm. He felt the tremor in her skin, the raw emotion that she usually kept so well hidden. "I know, Clara. I told him. I stood my ground. That's why he pulled my promotion." Her eyes widened, a fresh wave of shock washing over her face. "Your promotion? The senior analyst role? Oh, Daniel, no. You deserve that. You worked for years for that." Her voice was thick with guilt, her gaze dropping to her hands, clasped tightly in her lap. "This is my fault. If my numbers had been different." No, Daniel interrupted firmly. "Absolutely not. This is not your fault, Clara. This is Marcus Thorne's fault. He wanted to manipulate the truth, and he used your report as a leverage point. He would have found another reason, another scapegoat, if it hadn't been you. My refusal to lie for him, to compromise my integrity, is my choice, and it was the right one. I would do it again." He squeezed her arm gently. "We will get through this, Clara. We will." His words, though meant to reassure, also served as a stark reminder of their precarious position. The injustice burned within him, a slow, smoldering fire. He saw the fear in Clara's eyes, the crushing weight of professional disappointment. He felt it too, a dull ache that seemed to reside permanently in his chest. The smell of stale coffee and desperation permeated the air, a silent testament to their shared plight. The rhythmic clicking of the office clock on the wall seemed unusually loud. Each tick a stark reminder of the passing time, of opportunities slipping away. The days blurred into weeks, each one a repetitive cycle of quiet humiliation and professional stagnation. Daniel continued to perform his duties with the same meticulousness, the same dedication. But the joy, the sense of purpose, had been stripped away. He felt like a ghost haunting the halls of Sterling and Finch, an unseen presence, his contributions unacknowledged, his potential deliberately stifled. The laughter and easy banter of his colleagues, once a comforting background hum, now felt like a distant, alien sound. He spent his evenings in his apartment, the solitude amplifying his internal monologues. He questioned everything. Was he naive to believe in integrity in such a cutthroat world? Was his moral compass a burden, a weakness that would ultimately lead to his downfall? He remembered his parents' words, their unwavering belief in honesty, and he clung to them like a lifeline in a turbulent sea. He replayed the conversation with Thorne countless times, searching for an alternative path, a way to have his cake and eat it too. But each time, the conclusion was the same. He could not have compromised. He could not have looked himself in the mirror. The faint sounds of the city outside his window, the distant sirens, the murmur of traffic, seemed to carry his unspoken anxieties, echoing his turmoil. One particularly bleak Tuesday morning, Daniel received an email from HR, a compulsory performance review, to be conducted by Marcus Thorne himself. The subject line, stark and impersonal, felt like a summons to an execution. He knew what this was: Thorne consolidating his power, delivering the final, crushing blow. He imagined the sterile room, the condescending tone, the thinly veiled threats. The weight of it settled heavily on his shoulders, a physical burden. He could almost taste the fear, acrid and metallic, in his mouth. The faint scent of the office cleaner, usually fresh, now smelled like bleach, sharp and unforgiving. He walked into the review meeting with a sense of grim resignation. The small, windowless room felt claustrophobic, the air thick with unspoken tension. Thorne sat opposite him, a thin-lipped smile playing on his face, a stack of papers neatly arranged before him. Beside Thorne sat a junior HR representative, a young woman named Sarah, her expression carefully neutral, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Daniel," Thorne began, his voice dripping with feigned concern, "we're here today to discuss your recent performance. And frankly, it's been concerning. Your engagement levels, your willingness to collaborate, your overall contribution to the team, they've all taken a significant dip." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, his gaze unwavering. Daniel felt a surge of indignation, but he kept his voice even. "My work output has remained consistent, Marcus. I've met all my deadlines, and my analyses have been as thorough as ever. The only thing that has changed is the nature of the projects I've been assigned and the level of support I've received from leadership. Thorne chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Ah, the victim card. Classic. Daniel, we need team players here. We need people who are aligned with the company's vision, who are willing to go the extra mile to adapt. Your inflexibility regarding the Albatross report, your resistance to refine the numbers, as we discussed, demonstrated a lack of strategic thinking, a narrow focus that simply doesn't align with the demands of a senior role. He pushed a document across the table. It was Daniel's performance review, filled with carefully worded criticisms, subtle accusations of insubordination, and a clear recommendation for him to seek alternative opportunities if he couldn't realign his perspective. It was a thinly veiled threat of dismissal, a calculated move to force him out. Daniel's eyes scanned the damning words, each phrase a stab to his professional pride. He felt a cold dread seep into his bones. The quiet hum of the air conditioning seemed to amplify the silence, making the implications of Thorne's words even more deafening. "This is unfair, Marcus," Daniel stated, his voice tight with controlled anger. "This is a direct consequence of my refusal to compromise my integrity regarding Clara's report. You're punishing me for being honest." Thorne leaned back, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "Honesty, Daniel, is a luxury in this market. Results are paramount, and your actions have demonstrated a clear impediment to achieving those results. We value loyalty, Daniel. Loyalty to the company, loyalty to the vision. And frankly, your recent behavior has shown a distinct lack of it." He gave a dismissive wave of his hand. "Now, I suggest you take some time to consider your future here. We can arrange a severance package, of course, a mutually agreeable separation, if you find you cannot adapt." Sarah, the HR representative, shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her gaze flickering between Daniel and Thorne. Her silence, Daniel knew, was not an endorsement, but a necessity born of her position. He felt a profound sense of isolation, of being utterly alone against a powerful, vindictive adversary. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to hum with a malevolent energy, casting long, distorted shadows that mirrored his emotional state. He took a deep breath, the air feeling thin and inadequate in his lungs. This was it. This was the moment his career, as he knew it, hung in the balance. The smell of Thorne's cologne, overpowering in the small room, felt like the smell of victory for his tormentor. Tell me in the comments which city you're listening to the story from. Like and share with someone who loves emotional stories. Act 3. The weight of Thorne's ultimatum pressed down on Daniel with an almost physical force. Each word, a stone added to the burden he carried. He left the review meeting feeling hollowed out, as if a vital part of him had been excised. The vibrant, bustling energy of the office, once a source of stimulation, now seemed jarring, almost offensive in its indifference to his internal turmoil. He walked through the open-plan space, past the cubicles where colleagues typed diligently, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens, and felt utterly disconnected. He was a phantom, moving through a world that no longer recognized him. His internal monologue was a tempest of despair and defiance. Had he truly sacrificed everything for nothing? Was integrity truly so costly in this world? The thought of leaving Sterling and Finch, of abandoning the career he had meticulously built over nearly a decade, was a bitter pill. He imagined the questions from friends and family, the awkward explanations, the silent judgment. He pictured himself starting over, the uphill battle of finding a new role, the stigma of having been managed out. The future stretched before him, bleak and uncertain, a landscape devoid of the familiar landmarks of his ambition. Yet, beneath the despair, a stubborn ember of defiance still glowed. He remembered Clara's tear-filled eyes, the injustice etched on her face. He remembered the quiet pride he felt in upholding his principles. The thought of caving, of recanting, of bending to Thorne's will was more repulsive than the prospect of professional ruin. He would not become a pawn in Thorne's game. He would not sacrifice his soul for a paycheck. This conviction, though painful, was also a source of strange, quiet strength. The metallic tang of fear in his mouth was slowly replaced by the sharp, invigorating taste of resolve. He could hear the distant rumble of the underground, a constant, reassuring thrum beneath the city, a reminder that life, despite everything, continued its inexorable rhythm. Days bled into a week, then two. Daniel's desk remained stubbornly neat, his workload dwindling to administrative minutiae. He observed Thorne's ascendance, the smug satisfaction in his posture, the way he held court with other senior managers. Undoubtedly spinning a narrative of Daniel's supposed shortcomings. Clara remained ostracized, her spirit visibly dimmed, though she still offered Daniel a small, knowing smile when their paths crossed, a shared understanding of their quiet resistance. The air in the office felt charged, not with ambition, but with a latent sense of unease, a tension that hummed just beneath the surface. The scent of stale coffee and printer toner seemed to cling to everything, a faint, unpleasant backdrop to their muted existence. Then, one crisp autumn morning, an unexpected email landed in Daniel's inbox. It wasn't from HR nor from Thorne. It was from the executive assistant to Mr. Alistair Sterling, the founder and owner of Sterling and Finch, a man who was almost a legend within the company, a benevolent, albeit distant, patriarch. The subject line was succinct. Meeting request, Alistair Sterling. Daniel stared at the screen, his heart giving an involuntary lurch. Mr. Sterling? The owner? He rarely, if ever, interacted with anyone below the executive board. A cold knot of apprehension formed in Daniel's stomach. Was this the final act? Was Sterling himself going to deliver the death blow, confirming Thorne's insidious campaign? Or was there something else entirely at play? The possibilities swirled in his mind, a tumultuous mix of dread and a faint, almost imperceptible flicker of hope. He could hear the distant chatter of colleagues, but their voices sounded muffled, as if he were underwater. The meeting was scheduled for the following afternoon. Daniel spent the intervening hours in a state of nervous anticipation, his mind racing, trying to anticipate every possible scenario. He even considered asking Clara for advice, but decided against it, not wanting to burden her with his own anxieties. He meticulously reviewed all his past reports, meticulously organized his notes, preparing for whatever interrogation awaited him. The scent of rain, carried on a gentle breeze through his open window, usually calming, now felt like an omen, its subtle chill a premonition of the unknown. He arrived at the executive floor punctually, the plush carpets and hushed atmosphere a stark contrast to the sterile bustle of his own department. The air here was different, imbued with a sense of quiet power, a faint scent of old leather and polished wood. Alistair Sterling's office was vast, an expansive space adorned with historical maps and antique nautical instruments, reflecting a man with a deep appreciation for journey and exploration. Sterling himself was a man in his late 70s, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes, though framed by a network of fine wrinkles, still sharp and keenly observant. He possessed an aura of quiet authority, a wisdom born of decades at the helm. "Daniel, please, come in, have a seat." Sterling's voice was warm, surprisingly gentle, devoid of the harsh edge Daniel had become accustomed to. He gestured to a comfortable leather armchair opposite his massive mahogany desk. Daniel sat, his posture rigid, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He felt like a schoolboy summoned to the headmaster's office. "Thank you, Mr." Sterling leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "No need for formalities, Daniel. Alistair is fine. I understand you've been having a challenging time recently." His gaze was direct, unwavering, and Daniel felt a strange sensation, as if Sterling could see right through him, into the very core of his being. "Yes, sir," Daniel admitted, choosing his words carefully. "There have been some disagreements regarding reporting standards and certain ethical considerations." Sterling nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Daniel's face. "Indeed, I've been made aware of the situation with the Albatross acquisition report, and with Miss Hayes's initial analysis." He paused, a long, thoughtful silence stretching between them, punctuated only by the soft tick-tock of an antique grandfather clock in the corner of the room. The scent of old paper and dust, mixed with a hint of Sterling's pipe tobacco, filled the air, a comforting, almost nostalgic aroma. Daniel's heart began to pound. This was it, the moment of truth. He braced himself for the inevitable reprimand, the confirmation of his professional downfall. He imagined Sterling, a man who had built an empire on shrewd decisions, would see his actions as foolish, self-sabotaging. "Daniel," Sterling finally said, his voice soft but firm, "I built this company on trust, on integrity, on the belief that our word is our bond. I grew up in a time when a handshake meant something, when your reputation was your most valuable asset, and I instilled those values in this institution." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "When I heard about the discrepancy in the Albatross report and the subsequent treatment of you and Ms. Hayes, I decided to look into it myself. I have my ways of knowing what truly happens within these walls, even when certain individuals try to obscure the truth." A jolt went through Daniel. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of shock and a nascent, fragile hope. You investigated?" Sterling gave a wry smile. "Let's just say I have a trusted network, and I value honesty above all else. I reviewed Miss Hayes's original report. It was exemplary, meticulously researched, cautious but realistic. Exactly the kind of analysis we need. The revised report, as presented by Mr. Thorne, was an exercise in wishful thinking, bordering on deception. And your refusal to participate in that deception, Daniel, did not go unnoticed." Daniel could barely believe what he was hearing. The heavy weight that had burdened him for weeks suddenly began to lift, replaced by a lightness he hadn't felt in ages. The room, which had seemed so imposing, now felt like a sanctuary. The soft tick-tock of the grandfather clock now sounded like a reassuring heartbeat. "You defended a colleague, Daniel," Sterling continued, his voice resonating with genuine admiration. "You upheld your ethical principles, even when it cost you dearly. You chose integrity over ambition, truth over convenience. That, my boy, is the mark of a true leader. And frankly, it's a quality that has become increasingly rare." He paused, his gaze sweeping across Daniel's face, taking in his stunned expression. Mr. Thorne, on the other hand, displayed a profound lack of judgment, a disregard for the very values this company was founded upon. His actions have demonstrated that he is not fit to lead. He will, effective immediately, be relieved of his duties. Daniel's jaw dropped. Thorne, fired. The news was almost too much to process. The vindication, so long denied, was sweet, but also overwhelming. He felt a sudden rush of emotion, a wave of relief so profound it almost brought tears to his eyes. He could feel the tension draining from his shoulders, a physical release of weeks of stress. Sterling rose from his desk and walked around to stand before Daniel, his expression grave but kind. "Daniel, this company is at a crossroads. We need leaders who embody our core values, who inspire trust, not fear. We need someone who can rebuild the morale of the department, someone who can lead with integrity and foresight." He extended his hand, his grip firm and warm. "I would like to offer you the position of Director of Financial Analysis. It's a significant step up, a much broader scope of responsibility, and a seat on the executive committee. You'll report directly to me. The words hung in the air, echoing in the vast office, each one a hammer blow to Daniel's preconceived notions of corporate justice. Director? A seat on the executive committee? It was beyond anything he had ever imagined, a leap far greater than the promotion he had lost. It was a complete transformation of his career, a testament to the power of unwavering integrity. He could hear the distant sounds of the city, but now they seemed to hum with a new, harmonious energy, a symphony of possibility. The scent of old leather and wood in the office felt like the aroma of a new beginning. Daniel looked into Alistair Sterling's kind, wise eyes, seeing not just a boss, but a mentor, a man who truly understood the deeper currents of human character. He gripped Sterling's hand, a silent promise passing between them. "Mr. Sterling," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Alistair, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I accept I won't let you down." Sterling smiled, a genuine, expansive smile that lit up his face. "I know you won't, Daniel. I have a very good feeling about this, and I believe Ms. Hayes will be a valuable asset in your new team. Perhaps you can reinstate her original report with full credit where it's due." He winked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Daniel felt a profound sense of gratitude, a lightness in his chest that had been absent for far too long. His character arc, from overlooked worker to respected leader, had been forged in the crucible of adversity, shaped by his unwavering commitment to doing what was right. He had accepted losing the promotion to protect a colleague, and destiny, in its own enigmatic way, had rewarded him beyond his wildest dreams. The memory of Thorne's venomous words in the conference room now seemed distant, a faint echo from a past that no longer held power over him. The world, which had seemed so bleak, now shone with the dazzling promise of a new dawn. A coda. The transformation in Daniel's life was swift and profound, yet it felt entirely natural, like the inevitable blossoming of a seed that had been patiently nurtured. The heavy weight of isolation and dread that had clung to him for weeks evaporated, replaced by a vibrant energy, a renewed sense of purpose. He walked through the halls of Sterling and Finch with a different posture, not one of arrogance, but of quiet confidence, a man who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. The whispered judgments had vanished, replaced by genuine smiles, nods of respect, and a palpable shift in the office atmosphere. The air, once thick with tension, now hummed with a renewed sense of possibility, a collaborative spirit returning like a much-needed breath of fresh air. His first act as Director of Financial Analysis was to formally reinstate Clara Hayes's original Albatross acquisition report, ensuring it received the full recognition it deserved. He championed her work, advocating for her promotion to a senior analyst position, a move that was met with widespread approval throughout the department. Clara, her spirit rekindled, her eyes once again sparkling with quiet determination, became an invaluable member of his leadership team, a testament to the power of integrity and the bonds forged in shared adversity. The scent of her homemade shortbread, now a regular fixture on Daniel's new, expansive desk, became a comforting reminder of their journey. Daniel's leadership style was a stark contrast to Thorne's. He fostered an environment of transparency, open communication, and mutual respect. He encouraged debate, valued diverse perspectives, and above all, emphasized ethical conduct as the bedrock of all their financial endeavors. He made it clear that while results were important, they would never come at the expense of honesty or the well-being of their colleagues. He spent hours mentoring junior analysts, sharing not just his financial expertise, but also the lessons he had learned about resilience, and the enduring power of conviction. The hum of the server racks now sounded like the steady, confident pulse of a thriving, ethical enterprise. His new office, a corner suite with panoramic views of the London skyline, was a constant reminder of how far he had come. From this vantage point, the city no longer seemed indifferent, but rather a vibrant tapestry of human endeavor, a canvas for aspirations both grand and humble. He often found himself gazing out, reflecting on the winding path that had led him here. He had lost a promotion, endured isolation, and faced the terrifying prospect of career ruin, all for the sake of a principle. Yet in that loss, he had found something far more valuable: vindication, respect, and a leadership role that allowed him to shape a culture where integrity was not just a word, but a living, breathing force. Daniel's story became a quiet legend within Sterling and Finch, a whispered tale of a man who refused to compromise, who chose the harder path, and was ultimately rewarded beyond measure. It was a testament to the profound truth that sometimes the greatest victories are not found in the pursuit of personal gain, but in the unwavering commitment to what is right. His journey from an overlooked worker to a respected director, a beacon of ethical leadership, proved that while the path of righteousness may be fraught with challenges, destiny, in its own intricate design, often reserves its most extraordinary rewards for those who dare to walk it with unwavering conviction. The soft glow of the setting sun, painting the London sky in hues of gold and crimson, seemed to reflect the golden glow of a future built on honesty and courage. Thank you for making it to the end. If this emotionally explosive narrative left you breathless and forever transformed, like it now and share it immediately with someone who loves life-changing tales before everyone misses this bombshell. Tell me in the comments which city you're listening to this story from.